The problem is that when some people have a lot more resources to train their children than other people, then even when the kids get judged on the merits down the road, those who got the most training will have the most merit. And that's not because they're naturally smarter or more virtuous or harder working. It's because their parents invested in them in a way in which nobody else's parents could. And so that effect, we can talk about all the ways in which it happens and how big it is, but it's enormous. And it has the consequence that now the rich and the richest kids win the meritocratic competition and everybody else loses.
You talk a lot about the gaps in education. Give me some examples of how that plays out.
So this starts long before people are even born. If you look at the family structure of rich families and the family structure of middle class and poor families, rich kids are much, much more likely to be born into families with both parents still in the household. If you are a woman without a high school degree, or even with a high school degree but no college degree in the United States today, you will have roughly 60% of your children outside of wedlock. If you're a woman with a graduate degree, you'll have only 5% of your children outside of wedlock. So right from the get-go, kids of rich, educated parents have both parents in the household, and other kids usually don't. And then the rich parents just start spending money on their kids. You know, a typical public high school in the United States spends maybe $15,000 a year per child to educate the kids. A really poor high school might spend $8,000 or $10,000 a year, so that's a gap of about $5,000. But the top 20 private schools, as measured by Forbes, spend on average $75,000 a year per child to educate their kids. And all that money buys results. It buys training, it buys teacher attention, it buys careful educational programs. And when it comes time to take the SAT, for example, kids whose parents earn more than $200,000 a year have 250-point higher scores on average than middle-class kids, even as middle-class kids have just 125 points higher on average than kids below the poverty line.
So the gap between the very wealthy and the middle class is much higher than the middle class and the poor.
Much higher, twice as big on the SAT. And on other measures, the gap is even bigger. And the gap between the rich and the poor is truly enormous.
You know,